mascara for you guys. That's about it. It's Friday. We made it. Congratulations.
Farther than I went on a Friday.
All right. Well, good. I think we don't have like a critical mass, but we have the right people for the moment. So let's get into it. Let's see. I guess we don't necessarily have people from every work group. Which groups met this week?
Just settlement.
Just settlement. Okay. And are they joining?
Chuck just texted me he is not
Okay.
make it, and Aaron said he is running a few minutes late.
Okay. I mean, we can move on and circle back when Aaron gets here, unless you guys wanted to start with anything. And then since we haven't had any new developments for the other groups, of course, Chef, you're always welcome. Oh, there you are. If you want to share anything, but I'm imagining we probably don't have anything new since last week for any of our other groups. All right. Sounds good.
If sorry, if
No, go ahead.
Aaron or Chuck don't come on and you want to hear about what was discussed at the meeting, I was there.
Oh, that's right. You remember? Okay. Well, let's seize the opportunity to hear a non-chair perspective on how settlement is going. Go for it, Tika.
Sure. Okay. So this one we actually focused on the ombudsman part of the program as well as the equity statement. So we had a good turnout. There were some like initial discussions related to our last meeting where we actually brought up the equity statement and people sent in their thoughts. So this kind of was revisiting and what had kind of came out of that. And then the ombudsman conversation was separate. So first, Shannon did present the information to everyone in her original framework, as well as there was a group of us that met last week from several stakeholder groups to give some input into that as well. So then after that, we divided out into two groups. People picked whichever breakout they wanted to go into. So one was a discussion on the equity statement. And then the second one again was a discussion around the ombudsman program. And one of the things that came out of that conversation was that while the education committee had been asked to submit feedback for what would be put in the RFP, part of what hadn't been discussed completely yet was who was going to be reviewing the RFP. So then that was kind of where the direction of the conversation went, whereas I believe our group has requested to have a member sit in on that panel. But the need to definitely have someone that is knowledgeable already in the community and doing some of this work. So I think that about sums it up.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think it's great that the working group is being proactive. Having someone be part of the RFP process, I think would be really critical to keep us informed.
And to add to that, oh, I'm sorry, Sandra.
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say so the work group plans on bringing to the consortium recommendations along the lines of supporting the framework, what the RFP could look like. I don't have the exact wording in front of me because they're still working on it, but you'll be copied on that email, as well as what else should be added to the equity statement. And then once they agree on it, hopefully early next week, we will send it out to the consortium as well so that they can look it over and review prior to the meeting. So hopefully.
So we'll have a full presentation on that on the 29th.
Yep.
Awesome. Yep. Sounds great. Cool. All right. Well, if Aaron wants to, that was good. Thank you, Tika. Thank you, Kelly. And if Aaron hops on and wants to say more, he's welcome to do that. But so it looks like, let's see, we have some questions. I think we started to delve a bit into this, but it looks like these questions have gotten a little more specific about a position or involvement on how American Recovery Plan funds are spent. I think with the first round of pandemic relief funds, I think we asked for the department to give us updates and I think sort of asked for some transparency. I'm not sure we necessarily got a ton of transparency around it, but I mean, I think we got very fair explanations of how it was flowing and how it was being spent by the districts and things like that. You know, so I would expect, you know, we have every right to ask for an update from the department on that again. It looks like my internet's going to be weird, but and you know, I think that's up to us as a body, how, you know, how formal do we want to be about that accountability or that review of it that we're bringing. And, you know, obviously we can feel free to weigh in and try to influence that, but I think maybe, and perhaps this is something we want to have them speak to on the 29th, like they've done for other parts, is just make sure people understand how much there is, who actually has the decision-making power over these expenditures. Oh, thank you, Haley. So we do have, I can't click on it right now, but I'm assuming that's a pretty specific breakdown. Anyway, I'll let that load. Okay. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear any suggestions or ideas. I think, again, maybe a good starting place would just be to get all the members of the consortium to just sort of hear a baseline of like where relief stands. And I don't know if that would be the secretary or I know we had Jim Simmons do it previously because of course, you know, as a equity supporting initiatives, right? So if anyone has any thoughts on how to approach that, I would welcome them. But I think, to answer the question, what work group could it fall under?
That was just kind of like a brainstorm question. If it doesn't need to fall under any of them, it was just kind of like.
Yeah, I'm not sure it does. Again, I think that's something that having it brought to the full body, if it sparks that kind of interest and questioning, I think then we could think about like drilling down on it like that. But I do think it would be useful to be able to inform the consortium about what funding we have, you know, how is it being used and who's making decisions about its use, so that we can continually, you know, inform people as they would like to be informed. I think we'll get a better sense when we present that, whether or not we get a lot of questions or we get a lot of crickets.
There's another group that's also asking those same questions and holding meetings. I think it would be great for us to connect with them. They actually just had
What group is that?
Safe Schools. We just met with Dr. Bunting, John Sheehan, and Jimmy. I want to say it was Wednesday. Actually, today they were supposed to be getting back with some information.
Yeah.
The group is Safe Schools.
Oh, Safe Schools.
That Shannon's also a part of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do we think that's something that we would want at the meeting on the 29th? Or is that too much of I don't know if we can get through all of that.
I don't know that the 29th might be the right place to have that conversation yet. But I think it would be beneficial to connect with them and hear like what work they've already been at and what some responses and how that we can kind of together make a stronger voice and getting some of this information that we're requesting, or even just assisting them with you know, the decisions that they're making with some of these things.
So I would agree with Tika that I don't think the 29th is probably the best timing. Just for a couple of, so an optics perspective, this has nothing to do with anything. We're in the throes of asking the governor the legislator to budget money for work that we are proposing is important. There is a lot of money on the table for districts and the state to do similar type work, not just in the American Recovery Plan, but also in the new infrastructure bill that the president is pushing. Pre-K has got a huge space in that. So I think putting too much of this in front of people right now could distract from that work, much like they're finding with the school facility maintenance bill that's being drafted, where they're trying to seek a way for districts to get funding to kind of do some minor capital projects outside of the bond bill, the CN request process to address building infrastructures. So they're in a position where that's developing, but now all of a sudden ESSER 2 comes out and it said you can use it to do work on HVAC and life health systems that are, so like people are seeing these big pots of money and they're thinking, oh, well, why do we need to do this now? We have this here, we can put this to that. So I think putting too much of this out front and center right now could impact that thinking for certain people who don't have the long-term vision that we need. So that's just my casual observation.
So hold back on shining too much light on that, basically.
I think at this point, that's just my recommendation. You have definitely a way bigger perspective of all the pieces, Senator Lockman, around what's going on. So I would totally defer to but as a guy working in the trenches, so to speak, like navigating the pot of money I have, navigating my own local dollars, like there's going to be a lot of like, why are you asking, Jeff? You just got $30 million.
Right. No, I think you guys are closer to it. And I think that's why that's a really helpful perspective. I think maybe what we do now is do things like, maybe reach out, not in a public meeting, but maybe reach out to make a connection with Safe Schools. Haley, maybe, and just say, hey, would you mind sharing with us the conversation, some highlights of what conversations you're having, and let us know, yada, yada, yada. I mean, Shannon's a member of the settlement committee and just saying we want to kind of join up and understand what they're working on and doing in that regard. And then, I don't know, Jeff, if you think is there sort of a coordinated conversation happening amongst superintendents who are, really close to a lot of the spend?
We are getting our guidance from DOE that's trickling down from the feds. The application will be through the e-grants process. DOE has asked us after the first round that any plans that we develop, and we submit to them for approval, they are asking us to put them publicly on our website so everybody can see them flat out. Like, how are we spending our dollars? That's as close as we've gotten to guidance that's moving forward. The ESSER 3 money just got released and announced, like literally right before spring break, like finalized. The actual dollar amounts went out the door to the districts, like, so we know what our breakdown is across the state. DOE has a smaller portion than the districts. So like DOE is they're going to say, well, why are you, we have like hardly any compared to the district. I'm not going to say it's a shell game, but that's where it's going to kind of be like, well, we really should be bringing the districts in and getting a report from them and telling us what they're doing. Again, just my layman's perception of how some of these conversations go and where the money is sitting. So I think a good conversation once in maybe June is to ask maybe from the chief, maybe ask Dan Shelton to kind of provide some kind of where are the districts is not a bad ask, just to put it on their radar that the Reading is interested would be a good, just friendly reminder that there is something bigger out here that's kind of lurking and to keep it on their radar. I think in June, that might be a good ask to the chiefs, and then, get something from them, because most of us will probably not start looking at that until July, because it's 2024, it has to be spent by. So it's got a lot of time to be used. Like this isn't like we have to spend it like that. So there's a lot of process that's going to go into it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. So maybe, we can do some behind the scenes outreach to the community groups that are focusing on this and to the chiefs. That sounds like a good place for us to just start, as opposed to, having the department do a sort of pat presentation at the meeting. I think that sounds totally fair. Anybody else have any feedback on that?
Ray has her hand raised.
Oh, hey, Ray. Morning.
Good morning. Now that I found the thing, I don't even know where I found it to take it down. But so Jeff, you answered a couple of the questions that I was going to raise. So yes, I think is really vital, not only for district superintendents to share what they're thinking as a district, but for charter school leaders that serve the preponderance of kids that we're advocating for. I think we should hear it from them as well. I also think it's important not just to ask, what are you thinking, how about the use of the funds, what direction are you heading in? I think that how can the community give input into how those funds are used? What is the lane? What is the pathway to do that? I think that is equally as important a question for superintendents and charter school leaders to respond to.
Sort of inclusive budgeting processes. Is that something that districts have practiced much before, to your knowledge, Jeff? That's a good answer.
No, I'm looking at the recording button up there. I'm like, yes and no. I think that there are times and places that does occur, but it's generally serving the interest of a party that's not necessarily always the community. I think that there's definitely opportunity in this space. And in Colonial, I know we've talked about generating our own working community feedback group around this. We're still trying to wrap our heads around the amount, the time span, the parameters of it, right? Like, we know 20% must go to learning loss, otherwise you don't get it. So you have to build out, what is that learning loss funding going to look like? How is that 20% going to go towards that? Then you have the remainder, and you want to so there's a lot of pieces to it. So I know that our board president at our school board meeting this week, instructed our CFO that next month he'd like to get a preliminary, how are we starting to tee it up? Like, it's more of like just getting our feet on the ground and trying to map the structure forward, not necessarily what we're going to spend it on. Like, how are we going to frame it so that people have understanding of what it is, what we should be thinking about, and who has the ability to influence those decisions, whether it's principals, assistant principals, program managers, superintendents, HR, who are all the players involved in carrying out the goal of this funding. So I know in Colonial, I'm speaking for myself, that we're planning and thinking of some way that we can involve the community. But to your point, it's probably going to be a relatively new conversation. I don't think that's one that's been done this way, at least in Colonial in my history. It may have been done in other districts, and I've just never been around it.
I think that's an interesting opportunity for us as a consortium to think about how could we encourage, districts to pursue these very open processes, I guess. And I don't know. I think there's room for us heading into July, I guess, if we feel like we have the information we need to. But again, I'm not sure if we'd be viewed as antagonistic. We want to support districts being able to do things like that. And I think in the name of equity, I think Ray makes a great point to say that how inclusive of the community or this decision-making process going to be. I think it would be an interesting opportunity for us as a consortium to maybe help provide some models and examples.
There is, we do meet monthly. So if you want to reach out to Dan and ask for 5-10 minutes on a Chiefs meeting agenda in the public session to kind of pose those questions to the room, that's probably a great first step that can lead towards something over June and July as they get their feet on. Again, it's not, you're not coming in with a PowerPoint showing them all the different things that you want them to spend their money on or the district money on, right? It's more of like, hey, look, we want to know, how can we help and support you? What's the thoughts around engaging the greater community, your stakeholders, that kind of thing? Because that's basically what this consortium was designed to do for the city of Wilmington and their youth. So it's more of like kind of, here's how we did it. Maybe this can help you. I think that'd be a good approach.
I like it.
And
would you actually be willing to partner with us on taking those 5 to 10 minutes at that meeting?
Yeah, I don't have a, I would join in. I would gladly support the consortium's work. The consortium, there's a list of groups that everybody represents. The consortium, when somewhere in the fall, Darrell, myself, and Link and Dan were like, we're just going to put Reading on here.
Yeah.
So we give a monthly update on what's going on with Reading. So it's not going to be a foreign conversation to the superintendent and Laurel.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, good.
So you're not going to have to worry about this coming out of the blue and they're like, what the heck? This doesn't.
Yeah.
We've made it very clear that it's impactful across the state.
Great. Excellent. Well, Haley, maybe we can just reach out to Dan and get us on the next chief's schedule. Hopefully that'll work, and a couple of us can go on there and just, have that conversation about what does this look like navigating.
You may.
Excuse me, Senator, and to Tika's point, I think it's absolutely imperative for various education space related community advocate groups to try to see where there's alignment in our thinking. So because I've gotten 3 emails this week, superintendents, the mayor, whatever, when there's so many different songs being sung, it doesn't advance the conversation.
And it might also be worth reaching out to Dr. Bunting, because again, when we met Wednesday and discussed many of these issues, especially in relation to parent engagement, she said that she was going to be looking to pull the chiefs back in. So I don't know if that meant she was going to have a special meeting or if that was going to be an email. But if you would like to be part of that conversation, or at least on that agenda, it may be worth reaching out to her if there was going to be an additional meeting or a special meeting.
Sure. Yeah, I think we would want to outreach to her as we're outreaching to different folks, just because she's an ex officio member of the consortium, and we want her to know that we're looking into this.
So
and
also,
you can't tell I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at you and hoping that you're writing down all these things that I'm saying that we're doing. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Another group that is doing something similar that does always seem to be a little bit more out in front of things is Newcastle County, I believe. Matt Myers is seeking community feedback on how to spend the ESSER 3 money that they've received. I've seen some publications where he's released some town hall style meeting dates and time. So he definitely is he's got his way about him, but he definitely is very excited to engage the community. So there's a template there as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
He's a former educator.
That's right. He did teach at Eastside, right?
Nope, Prestige down the street. Prestige.
Prestige.
Prestige. Right. Sorry, my bad. My bad.
Yeah, we're.
Look, I have to step off at 11 for a call, so I'm gonna just I'm gonna disappear soon. But glad to be a part of the conversation.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. All right, good. Well, do we have any other questions? I think we have a good starting point to start engaging that conversation. So we'll just need to be connecting with the secretary, connecting with the chiefs, connecting with safe schools at minimum in terms of community-based groups to say, hey, we're trying to pull this conversation together. And then, if you're seeing other related messaging that feels like it's all over the place, Ray, Tika, anyone, maybe that's just something to share with the team, so that maybe that's becomes someone else that we want to connect with and try to.
Yeah, it's not messaging. It's ongoing attempts to add value to public education, and it's so many different groups with so many different niches, and they all want to meet with the superintendents one by one, or and so it's just not as it's not the approach to have a collective impact. So we should talk about that.
Okay.
And then there's also groups like Delaware United who have been doing education funding workshops, like information sessions.
Oh yeah, that's right. I've been hearing about that. Delaware United or Network Delaware?
Delaware United. Network Delaware is doing some similar things, but in a little bit different capacity. And then another group that's really active, I think Dawn mentioned them downstate, is it's like SDA, it's like Southern Delaware. I know that it was either this week or last week that they just had they just had a Black poet session, I think it was. I know that they had
The Alliance for Racial Justice.
it might have been. I know that they each month they seem to have like a little bit different of a theme that they work on, but they have organized some really good speakers and presentations. So I've gotten on their listserv. So I've been getting notices about what's all going on. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to attend much, but they are definitely on the move. And some other conversations that I have with folks that are localized down there, that the members are, so I don't know if you remember, similar to when we had the Kerwin Commission, and she was speaking about how they finally got some movement on their educational initiatives because of the backing of some of the progressive liberal community members with money. And so it seems to be not necessarily quite that down there, but there are some folks that have some influence.
That's good. Yeah, it's definitely, I think to Ray's point, it's like moving in the direction of that collective impact model and thinking of what can we do to bring together all these different tentacles, I think, to get on one page. Because I agree, that was the great, really exciting part about the Kerwin conversation that we had, was how they managed to accomplish exactly that and how it got them to this major influx of legislative commitment and funding. Okay, I think we're in good shape with that agenda item, unless there's any other questions or suggestions or thoughts. We can move into the agenda for the 29th, which I think is pretty straightforward still. We know we're gonna have updates from all of your, is educators making a presentation? Probably not, right? No. Okay, so we don't need that to actually be reflected, because we don't even need to bring it up and say, hey, educators are in a holding pattern waiting for the money that they asked for. We don't even need to say that. But we'll have the other three groups present. Settlement has, I think, a pretty robust presentation planned on all the work that you've been doing and potentially some motions. So that's good to know. And then we'll provide updates on the three bills that we, supported, endorsed. Yes, Kelly.
Do you want to provide any updates on any of our recommendations when we talk about the legislative updates?
You mean any of our specific recommendations in terms of just like where our funding ask stands?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can. I mean, it's not necessarily a big, exciting update. I mean, we can say what's being considered and, what, if any, sort of public facing things have happened in that regard. I don't think there's going to be, by April 29th, necessarily anything really big to show, but we can certainly maybe touch upon the tenets of the recommendations again, just to remind people that that's our priority of what's happening. Although I think the next bullet here, the testimonial video, will kind of speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking, just to keep them so they're not like, oh, they just disappeared or something. We know.
Yeah, maybe under legislative updates, we can add, our interim recommendations and budget asks, and actually have a slide we can run through really quickly of what is encompassed in that. And then I think that actually probably creates a good segue to show, a testimonial video, remind people, we had this great event, we had all these great voices speaking in support of these budget recommendations. We need more of this, and we can talk about how people can show their support. Hopefully we'll have a broader audience at this meeting, and although we did have a lot of folks in attendance at that event, and we'll let folks know how, if they're interested in supporting these recommendations, how they can do that. So I think we should be prepared to have a video to show. I know Matt and I said that we would set the 29th as our goal to have ours finished. I don't think we have anything scheduled yet, but that's a good reminder. And, and then a slide on sort of who to contact if one is interested in contributing something. And then, yes, we invited Education Trust to share some of their findings. I think, at that point, will be sort of wrapped up at the end of the not wrapped up, but we will probably be at least like an hour at that point, right? So I don't think we should have them do too much. I think they're expecting something like 10 to 15 minutes. And I think certainly we can open it up for dialogue after that. But to our prior discussion, I don't think we should get into the ARP conversation necessarily, unless someone wants to present that, as a question. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions about that section? I think probably more than anything, it'll be, they'll be presenting a survey of how things stand and what are some of the evidence-based things to be encouraged, So I think, disconnecting it a bit from the actual, like, what are the funds and where are they coming from and who do we talk to conversation. Okay.
Is there anything they can, so I know that there's like a
Public
Q&A
engagement?
after presentation.
Anything on that in particular?
Sorry. Is there any, will they be
Sorry,
able to
we had a
send-
long.
works. Will they be able to send us any information ahead of time to help formulate some of the questions that we may have for them to answer? Or is it just, kind of like a cold presentation and then any questions we may have?
Sorry, my dog was barking and I really couldn't hear you very well at all. She was going crazy.
You can't even hear your dog. It's amazing. Yeah, we can't even hear your dog. It's amazing. We didn't even hear it. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, right.
I think your dog is trying to tell you something. It sounds serious too.
Yeah, I think it's just a package being delivered. It's really not.
Okay.
But she's very protective. But so no, was the question, can we submit questions to them in advance?
So no, I was just thinking, if you were asking like for questions of them, would they be sending any information ahead of their presentation for us to digest that may formulate some questions that we may have when they're there to present?
It's a good question. Haley, you were part of that meeting. Do you think we could ask them? I mean, they shared with us some resources that they already have on some things.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe instead of that in the newsletter, we could send out those 3 briefs that she sent around. There's one on unfinished learning, something else and something else. I can't remember, or they might all be in one, but I thought that could be, we could add that in the newsletter and say, review these materials. And if you think of questions based on this to ask at the meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think it would be good to share the briefs so people kind of know, who they are, why are we inviting them in? They have, they're a group we've connected with in the past and have thoughts to share on a lot of the things that we're working on. Yeah, and then allow folks to submit questions or just be prepared to ask them at that time. But it sounds like, even though there's the 3 different briefs, unfinished learning is really going to be the focal point, right? Of why we're bringing it on to spark ideas. So maybe we should, I don't know. Do you guys think we should share 3 briefs on 3 different topics? Or if the conversation is going to focus on unfinished learning, should we just share that brief probably and just keep it focused? Because I don't want to confuse the issue.
Well, I think there might be 1 brief on unfinished learning and 3 ways to address it. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
There's 3 different like articles on each broken down, but the full thing, it's like a little bit longer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
Okay. I think we should share whatever their unfinished learning stuff is, because I think that's top of mind for a lot of people as an equity issue.
Mhm.
And, would love to have people get an opportunity to kind of think about what's going on in that space as we wrap up one school year and head into the planning for another. And how can we be supportive as stakeholders? Cool. Okay. And again, I think, we want to keep them to like 10, 15 minutes max, but probably more like a 10-minute conversation and then 10 minutes for dialogue. Okay. All right. So we talked about testimonial videos. We're going to try to encourage more submissions at the meeting. I forget if we actually talked about the newsletter metrics last week. I feel maybe we didn't.
We didn't because I wasn't here.
Yes.
I didn't have them to send to Jason. I didn't send them to him. But I can go over it real quick. I'm having some screen sharing issues, so I'll just read them to you. And I can always send out a document if people are interested. But so overall, some metrics that we look at that we get generated from MailChimp are the overall, like the open rate and the click rate from the email. So our open rate was 36.6%, which is really good. The industry, like it kind of compares to the industry standards. And the industry standards are 21.7%. So we're doing better than standard, which is great. And our overall click rate is actually really high. It doesn't sound high, but it is. It's 8.8%. While industry standards are 2.3%. So that's great. Top things that people clicked on in the last newsletter were the link to the settlement timeline graphic that we have posted, the full February consortium meeting link to that, and one of the community news events that Tika shared, the action, the NBA hoops program, and also what Matt shared, the Action Delaware thing. So people really loved the community news, which was great. Subscribers with the most opens. I want to shout out Dawn. Thank you. It's clear that she forwarded the newsletter and we had over 992 opens. So thank you. And it's so that's a tactic that works. So if you can share the newsletter with your other lists and things like that, that would be great.
We should make it a competition.
Yeah.
I know, right? So thank you, Dawn.
Well, Jeff's not on the call because I think the person who sends it the most should get a day off of work. That's a joke. No, days off of work. No, I definitely did share it with everyone. We want everyone to know, to have this information. So we're grateful for the newsletter. Thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you. And then this is just a little interesting tidbit that we utilize. You can do A/B testing. So you can do different subject lines and see which one gets more clicks. So one subject line we tried was, "We want to hear from you." And another one is "Make your voice heard." And it was interesting. The winning subject line was "Make your voice heard," with the emphasis on like the person opening the newsletter. Instead of "we want to hear from you," like "we want something from you." We thought that was pretty interesting. So we'll probably continue to do some A/B testing and see what, works the best. But yeah, that's what I have so far for metrics.
I love the metrics. That's really informative and interesting. And I like the proof that the community news is helpful. I hope, did you get some by yesterday, I guess was the deadline?
I don't think we had people. I don't think anyone submitted anything, unfortunately. So I was gonna ask people today if they had stuff.
I can take a look at our newsletter that we already share. I think it's bi-weekly, and send some stuff to you, Haley.
Okay, sure.
I apologize. I must not have seen it.
Oh,
yeah, let me keep my eyes out too to see, like, if we find something today and share it, could it potentially fit in? I feel like now, this period of time, we're getting a lot of like calls for youth internship opportunities in the summer and things like that. Would that be cool? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of guided by whatever we think. I mean, I think if it relates to education and equity, it fits. Probably nothing like too random.
So another thing I think would be a good fit for that, then maybe I actually was already going to just try and mention this, slightly tied to maybe the educator group, but I shared, I think, with most folks on this call yesterday. If not anyone else I missed, I can add it to you. But Brandywine School District is now going to, and they may be using some of their ESSER money for this, but they're opening up to their juniors and seniors students, and through the application process, to then work with, I guess it's Bush and their ECAP program at PS. But anyway, they would be working with the ECE students. And it's, I believe, just for the summer right now. I don't know how the future plans to expand, but they're using that pilot as a program to target students that are interested in going into possible education or working with children in some form or fashion. So I thought that based on some of our other recommendations that we had with ECE as well as the educators work group, that this would be a good pilot and kind of like a pipeline for us to keep on our radar. That was one reason. The second reason I shared it was for those of you that know juniors or seniors that are in Brandywine School District and interested in applying.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah, Tika, I was going to ask you to speak to that email, so thank you. That's good, and I think we can highlight that.
Yeah, I like the idea of highlighting, interesting, models that support our recommendations that are happening in the districts. I think that's a cool idea, and that seems to me like, one, it's sort of a pipeline builder, right? Very cool. So if anyone else has anything. So today's the day for those on the call. If you have something really great that is happening in, education and equity, do share. I saw Ray's going to send something about the organizing training. That's fantastic. And it is also a great opportunity for us, I think, to highlight our partners in terms of the membership that's represented on the consortium. So share your bragging things. There you go. Perfect. Erin, yes. Love it. Okay. All right. So get that over to Haley, right, Haley, or to Alexis? Can we send it to you and you can send it to Alexis, or?
I was thinking, yeah, it was easiest to send to me because people know my email. There also is Alexis sent out like an email, I think, to all of us asking for community news. So if you have that email, you can reply to it as well, but you can just send it to me if that's easier.
Perfection. All right, great. Awesome. Sounds like we got some good material then coming your way. All right. Anything else on engagement or anything else we've discussed up until this point?
Speaking of metrics, sorry, my phone just turned, Alexa just heard Alexa and started when you said Alexis. So I'm working on getting the 2019-20 dropout graduation rates for our annual report. So as soon as I have that, I will get to crunching them and getting that report together. It will end up covering 18-19 and 19-20, just with how things ended up hitting.
Okay.
So I'll have enrollment information for
Great.
years, achievement for the first, and then graduation dropout for the 2. So
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. And I saw Amy Solomon just posted in the chat about Safe Schools had posted some information about school board forums. I think this is our last newsletter before school board meetings. So I think, pumping that up obviously makes a lot of sense. Making sure people know there's an election coming and that they should engage critical decision making for our students happening there. So okay, great. All right. And on that note, I know we have a couple members of the public. Everyone is May 11th across the board, the whole state. So we can easily sort of state that, and then different forum dates for yes, but the election itself is May 11th.
Got it.
All right. So I know we have Kathy, we have Amy. Would either of you like to take a couple minutes to address the group? You okay, Kathy? Okay.
I'll be happy to. Let me just step into the hallway real quick.
Oh, here, you're fine. I love
showing
it.
a movie in my class.
Oh, cool.
Talking about the gods, and we're watching Hercules. So I am a reading specialist at the University of Delaware, and we're proud to be, students, you can see me, proud to be working with Senator Sturgeon and Senator McBride on bringing a science of reading bill to Delaware, because as I always say, it's like my tagline: 40% of all children learn to read no matter how you teach them. 60% of all kids need direct systematic phonics. Unfortunately, we for years haven't trained teachers in the science of reading. So, to no fault of their own, they're not teaching kids the best possible way. So from that, we've had a groundswell of educators and parents of dyslexic kids who want to bring the Reading League to Delaware. And the Reading League is a national organization with local memberships, and their whole goal and focus is to educate both parents and teachers about best practices in reading. And so I wanted to just put that out there, that we would love support and we'd love people to join us. And my goal is to cast a very large net of not only parents and teachers, but all the stakeholders, because, and this, I do fundamentally believe this, that learning to read is the greatest civil rights issue of our time. If you have dyslexia and you have money, you can get training. Your parents can send you to a private school. They can get tutors. If you don't have access to those resources, illiteracy can become a generational fixture, because you just 50% of all dyslexics in America don't know they're dyslexic. And it affects, and dyslexia in our country affects our economy, our health systems. And I always say, and I'll stop after this, Delaware doesn't have a drug problem. Delaware doesn't have a poverty problem. Delaware has a reading problem. And if you go look at our prisons and especially our youth offenders, over 75% of them are functionally illiterate. And I just, my own personal reason behind this is I cannot sit in I advocate for families. I can't sit in another IEP meeting and not have a child get their needs met, when we could just be teaching everybody to read. And so I would love any support with with putting the Reading League together, or any sort of suggestions or strategy. I'm open for everything.
Thank you, Kathy. I did get to sit in on a presentation. I don't know if the Reading League was specifically presenting. I think they were, that Senator Sturgeon presented for joint Senate and House Education Committee meeting last month. And it's going to be a lot of great work happening, I think, around that. So thank you. That's I think something good for us to follow, and please keep us in the loop about, progress in establishing a chapter, and I think we can, follow up on that, and maybe have a conversation in one of our subcommittees. Maybe, we'll have to see which one would fit, maybe for a deeper dive.
Oh, that'd be great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Does the Reading League focus just on students that are experiencing dyslexia, or just reading in general?
So the Reading League is a advocacy educational group, and they focus on best practices in teaching reading. And the science of reading is clear. We should be teaching all kids as if they're dyslexic, because it doesn't hurt the children who can read with ease, or learn to read with ease, but it does overwhelmingly create a successful situation for those who can't easily read. And so what they do is they provide intense trainings, but they also provide presentations, and they cast a wide net of educating educators and parents and community members and stakeholders about the value of teaching reading the right way. I'm not sure I answered your question, but.
No, that's fine. That's good. I actually thought of that question, reading raised in the chat, about how is it different from Read Aloud Delaware?
Yeah, part of what I have found, and what I spend a lot of my time doing, is really helping parents understand what's going on, and helping other teachers understand. There's a Reading League's whole focus is how to put the information out there, to provide families with information on how to get resources, how to, but also provide educators with good, solid, research-based information.
So the science of reading is very intense. So do you have any suggestions on then how to present that even mindset shift to parents and educators? Because it's a lot to entail, and even specifically like in chapter 2, I know a lot of people seem to have a lot of questions about it. But is there a way that you guys have kind of like maybe put it in simpler forms, or something that I can tell you that a lot of parents probably cannot digest the information in there?
Right, and that is part of the process, and part of the problem is the amount of research in the science of reading is massive. It's 50 years worth of research. So what the Reading League does is they do a really good job of determining the quality information and bringing it to, as I always say, it's like when my sons say, I ask them to fix my computer, they bring it down so I understand it, but they totally get it at that level. And they do that for both teachers at teaching level, but also at parent level. You know, I don't want to be, be a cause of controversy, but you know, people of color and economic, lower socioeconomic, have likely suffered from not being taught to read for generations. And I spoke at the World Literacy Summit at Oxford University, and my topic was on that we are traumatizing kids in the fact that we're not teaching them to read correctly. And so what that trauma comes out in is, especially kids who are dyslexic, is we blame them for not learning to read when we are not teaching them to read. So their inner story becomes that they are not smart, and most dyslexic kids are extremely smart, and they have a whole other brain skill set that a lot of us don't. Bill Gates is a perfect example. He's dyslexic, he's on the spectrum. He saw the code of Microsoft in his mind first, and then he went down when the rest of us start at the bottom and work up. And so this generations of illiteracy probably could, when you stop it with one person, that education of that changes a family's socioeconomic education level into the future for generations. And that's where, by doing that, we can change families. And when you learn to read, that changes your socioeconomic, but it also changes the impact on your mental and physical health.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I just want to say, this is the one thing that when I did my speech in London was, kids who haven't been taught to read the way they're supposed to, they have the same reactions of post-traumatic stress disorder as a combat veteran, because it's so traumatic. And so they can't wait to get out of that school. And it affects them for years. And then they come back when they have babies and they walk into that school, and all schools smell alike. And the sense of smell in that school triggers their post-traumatic stress disorder, and they don't even know it. And that's one of the reasons we don't have a lot of people engage with their kids when they haven't had a strong experience themselves, and they don't even know it. I just, I diagnosed a little boy as a 9th grader, and he had been actually kicked out of public schools and came to a private school I was teaching at. And when we told him what he had, it changed him, and he graduated and has a job. And that's why we just really need to get the information out there, because I think we can change families, we can change our mental health system. I'm passionate about this. You can tell me, you can give me the hook.
No, I agree. And I also see that actually with math too, and that very often, math builds foundationally, and that when you are a high school or middle school teacher, you are certified in math content and you have a specialized, but oftentimes some people may go into elementary teaching because they already themselves don't have strong math skills. And
Right.
so because they don't have that strong math ground, they're not seeing those higher concepts to be able to see those gaps with their students and teach them from that same level and then beyond. So I understand what you're saying in reading, because I also see the same thing, math, and then like you said, how that has other community implications.
Yeah, and that's why I say we don't have a poverty or a drug issue. We really have a violence issue. We have a reading issue. And I just think, and Mississippi is the greatest touch point. They implemented a science of reading. They trained all of their teachers in their lowest socioeconomic schools, their lowest test score schools. And they went from the bottom of the reading test scores in our country to the top. I mean,
Yeah.
it used to be a joke in public education. Well, at least we're not Mississippi. Well,
and I think the recording of the committee that where they presented is actually available. I'll see if I can find that, the committee that they came and presented. I know we're almost 11:30 and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. But certainly any members of the planning committee, I think your email is in the chat if anyone wants to reach a subcommittee that and others are doing on the science of reading, because it's certainly relevant to our work. And because I know we only have a couple minutes, Amy, I don't know if you wanted to make a comment, but we're gonna have to give you a really strict time frame so we can let everybody go at 11:30. So you've got 2 minutes, go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I asked Kathy to show up here today because she's started working with Sarah McBride and Laura Sturgeon on the Science of Reading bill. So I just had your email and Haley's and Don's and Tika's. So I forwarded some of these information, like the Zoom meeting with Dr. Burke and Laura Sturgeon and a group of people, slides that Kathy has been sending me. I put her presentation that she for the Oxford and the Zoom here, and I also emailed that through. And when you're talking about parent engagement, I think the great thing about Kathy is she's a resource we have here in Delaware, and she is willing to be helpful, and she wants to be helpful, and she wants to do it in a structured, impactful way. And what she has is 20 years of knowledge in our private schools here in Delaware that teach kids who learn differently how to read. So we have these special resources in Delaware that other states do not, that are world-class. So I think when you talk about parent engagement, these are the things that we should be boiling down and sharing for parents that are really valuable. And it has to be structured, and I'm excited. Laura Sturgeon said she's going to take the next year to work on this legislation. And I think your educator work group could resurface and perhaps participate in that. Like these are important things that we need to do. I also shared in the Zoom Safe Schools website is now live. And that Facebook post that we had about the school board meetings is useful. And we need support, I think, getting backing and all these advocates, some sort of monetary income for outreach for public engagement.
Amy, sorry, that's the timer for 2 minutes.
Okay. But anyway, we actively need your support to Susan Bunting and John Sheehan and Jim Simmons for Safe Schools to actually get resources to do the work that they want to. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And I know Haley's going to be in touch. We actually had some specific questions about, some of the art work. So we will be in touch. And thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone has a lovely weekend, and see you back here next week as we move towards our next full body meeting. All right.
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you.